Hi, folks. Welcome to Let's Just Go. This is Kevin Casey's Modern Missionary Podcast, where we talk matters of family, theology, mission, big wins, betrayal,
and death,
and death, even death, and just the whole spirit of going for it in life.
Today's episode is July 6th, Casey's Day of Death. Part 1, because we cannot fit all of this in just one episode.
In the past, we've called this Casey's Leukemia journey. And so in doing this, we decided that we were going to break it up into 3 different parts.
I feel like if we tried to do it all in one episode, we couldn't focus on certain aspects of it that are really important. So it's good to do it this way.
So I've got 3 titles for the 3 different parts. And this first one being like what you said, July 6th, Casey's Day of Death, covering the nature of the journey underway. And the second one is Miracle Community from Our Disaster. And just all that, our dilemma and our disaster that we went through, how from it was actually sparked a miraculous length of community. And then the third one is titled Rainbow Level Winning. So how are we going to go through this? Are we going to go through it light-spirited or somber?
First of all, this is actually my 10-year anniversary of survival. So it is in some ways light-spirited. I mean, it's going to be talking about coming face-to-face with death. There's some really serious issues in that. There are things that, personally we were dealing with and all that. That's serious. But I feel like the fact that I'm still alive 10 years later, that it needs some lightheartedness too, because it is a miracle and I accept it. And I have been blessed by that. And I think to put a doom and gloom spin on it actually does not do the gift that God gave me justice.
It's hard for me to actually think of it as a doom and gloom. When we were going to have just one episode, maybe a long one, then splice it, I was, my title for it was A Year Filled with Lifetime. It was the most potent, active, filled with life.
Yes.
I don't feel like there's not a year of my entire life that was filled with more life than 2015, like positive life. Also negative stuff, but as far as if you calculated the positive, there was more in that year than any other of my life.
When I think about it, it wasn't just about me having cancer. Life came from all of that, plus our family and our community. That was a miracle too that I wasn't expecting.
When you have something like this happen, then a lot of times people are going to organize their life and they're going to be like, I got to withdraw from everything and I've got to handle this. And that is not how we did it. We
sometimes much to my chagrin at the beginning.
Right. We did more.
Yeah.
It was like, well, let's just fill everything. Is it in Talladega Nights where they're going around the race strip and there's a crash and there's like fire and smoke and they can't see. And it's like, do I brake? Do I get off of the race strip? And someone's like, punch it. And the driver decides, I can't see what's there. We either peel off and stop, hit the brakes, or
just go through it.
We're going to blast through it. And he goes, punch. He blasts right into the unknown. And that's what we did.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good way
we really did
to put it.
And so this is not just a story of feelings and emotions and reflections. And there are stories. Like there were things we went and did.
Right.
And other people went and did, and stuff that got started that we got to engage.
Yeah, definitely. And it's good. It's all good.
So July 6th, Casey's Day of Death. What do you remember?
I remember having a feeling that day before we went into the hospital of wanting to utterly and totally give up. And I never had that feeling before. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to drink. I just really wanted to lay my head down on the bed and curl up in a ball. And that was concerning to me, was that feeling of utter, like I felt helpless and I felt like I was done, really.
And it didn't have like a source to it. It was just this overall sense of, I shall now just be done and die. Like your right hip wasn't in pain.
No.
And it was like, I can't handle this pain. I want to die.
No.
It was just this overall life and its energy are over.
Yes. Yeah. That is a good way to put it. It felt like my life energy was depleting very quickly. It was vague because I wasn't in pain, actually. I wasn't in pain. My heart rate was beating very fast. I could feel it in my chest. My head could feel that. But overall, as far as pain was concerned, I wasn't feeling any pain whatsoever. So it wasn't like I had something specific. There wasn't like a medical emergency at that point going on, you know? I mean, there was, but
it didn't feel like
didn't feel like it. Yeah.
And knowing what it is now too, just
Like looking back.
extreme fatigue and then fatigue of the fatigue. Like I've been fatigued for so long. Now I'm fatigued of being fatigued.
Yeah.
And so all these engines running a million miles an hour, you can handle it, but you're mentally just exhausted.
Yes. The reason why I wasn't like, I got to go to the hospital right now is one, because I did have an appointment like 5 days later. And I thought that I could just muscle it out until that appointment came. So I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I got to go to the hospital. Well, I wasn't up until then, but I think this was the crack. And one of the things I remember feeling is when we did go into the emergency room, I felt so much relief that I did not have to do anything anymore. So I, start off that day feeling this kind of hopelessness, and I had 2 friends come over and visit, and they came together, and we were having conversation, but when they first walked in the room, I saw them see me, and I could see concern on them, although they played it off. Like, they asked me how I was doing and all of that, but there was like this moment where I could see that they were super concerned. You had been kind of encouraging me to go to the doctor, and I've been resisting that because I was just waiting. And when I saw that, it was like it flipped a switch that, oh, I think that there is something to Kevin seeing me need to go to the doctor. And so after they left, I came to you and I was like, okay, I'm ready. I need to go into the doctor. I didn't feel still like it was an emergency, but I felt that
you had 2 and 3 witnesses.
Yeah, that was like, mine. It was concerning enough for them to actually play off like how bad I looked or how bad they sensed that it was, that I perceived that. And so it was like, okay, I think that I need to go in to the doctor.
Yeah. This has been a sensitive part of the story.
Yeah.
of ours, because here's your husband. Isn't he taking care of you? They were like, Kev, she needs to go to the emergency room. And they kind of communicated it like I didn't know that, and that I hadn't tried, and why was I keeping you from going to the emergency room? And I know that that's not as important as the fact that you need to go to the emergency room, so just brush it off. But that came with months of baggage between the 2 of us.
Yes.
And so it in that moment, I had to shake that offense off. But listening to you talk about the appointment that's coming up, it wasn't just any appointment. You had taken blood before. And so that was an appointment that was going to have blood results for how you've been feeling. And you were looking to it. All your answers are going to be, given at once. And so but that day you're suspending still everything until you go to the appointment that's coming up. But then you see the 2 or 3 witnesses and, compel you to go. And it's like, okay, yeah, now go.
That was actually shocking to me, was when I went to my primary care doctor and they had taken some blood and it was concerning. And they told me that I couldn't get into the oncologist for 2 weeks. But my primary care doctor couldn't officially diagnose me, but she gave me a pretty good indication of what I was looking at. But the reason why I had to wait, because the oncologist, which is who I had an appointment with, they were the ones who were going to do the blood and a bone marrow biopsy and officially diagnose. So you have to be officially diagnosed, of course, before you can be treated. So that I was in the queue. I was in the process of that happening, but I couldn't wait it out.
I don't think that we thought that that's what the answer of things was. They were not saying, well, we think it's this, but we can't tell you yet. We can tell you in 2 weeks. I mean, that's not how they were talking,
No.
to us. That there were possibilities, but there was just this uncertainty. We didn't know what was going on. You think you knew what was going on?
My primary care doctor told me that my blood work looked like it was leukemia. Not what kind or anything like that, but I think she wasn't going to tell me, but she did, and I think she thought that would calm me down because of such a she was not happy with the amount of time it was going to take for me to get to see the oncologist. I had somewhat of an indication. I wasn't like super freaked out about it, but I did have a little bit of an indication. But
our relationship was so bad during that time. I mean, I get upset about it now.
Yeah, me too.
Because there are things that are important you wouldn't even tell me.
I did tell you.
Not like that.
But anyway. So we went to Polymomy Hospital into the emergency room in Aiea. And the reason we went there, it wasn't the closest hospital, but it was where my doctor, the oncologist that I was going to be seeing, he worked out of Polymomy. So we decided to go there. I got in immediately, they took me to a room. They took my blood and they gave me some pain medicine. Even though I wasn't in pain, I think, it was kind of to numb me a little bit. What I remember is after that blood work, I was kind of in and out of sleeping, and you were there and you were next to me. I think we were talking a little bit, but then I remember the doctor coming in and he looked at me and he said, "I just want to tell you that I am sorry." And he had a lot of compassion in his. And I thought he was telling me that they looked at my blood work and they found out I had leukemia. And I told him, it's okay. I already know that I have some kind of leukemia. I already know that about myself. So it's okay. You don't have to apologize. But it's really funny because when I think about it later, what I think that he was doing was apologizing because he thought I was going to die. And that is something that I didn't really discover till later, because there are some things about the emergency room visit that I vaguely remember. I remember having feelings, but I don't remember exactly what was going on. But for me, that's super vivid, especially remembering back, because you and I were having a conversation once and it dawned on me. I was like, oh my gosh, I think he was trying to tell me that I was possibly going to die. He really tried. He had a lot of compassion and empathy.
There were a lot of people in the emergency room. It's a busy ER.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the attention while people were doing other things was on our little area. There was sort of like, there's something happening right there. We're going to lose one today.
Yeah. They were so nice. Like, I just think back about it now, and, they were all just trying to make you and I as comfortable as possible because of that.
That's why we call the episode July 6th, Casey's Day of Death.
Yeah.
And so that's not how you find out. You're behind a desk and you go to your follow-up appointment and they say, we're sorry we break it to you, but you have leukemia or you have cancer and this is what we're looking at, and here's a strategy we might do, and that's not what our visit turned into. And on my side, I said, what are we looking at? And he says, we're going to do everything we can to keep her alive. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And he says, right now, all her organs are right on the verge of just failing, of shutting down because of the things that are going on inside of her body. And we can't give her any kind of treatment for that stuff. We can only pump her right now with like saline. And we need to hydrate her and drown out what is happening. And he says, we've got about a 50-50 shot to keep her going through today. And I'm like, wait a second, what do you mean 50-50 shot? And he said, she could shut down any minute. But we're on top of it right now. We're pumping her with fluids, and we got about a 50% shot of getting her through today. This was just for today.
Yeah.
This was just to be alive today. And that wasn't, I remember that was not hush hush or hidden from you. And I thought that you heard this and that you were zeroed in on it, because this was a discussion for the next several days. The next day it was like, we're still working with this. She's got a 50% shot. We're glad we did it yesterday, but now she has the same battle here on day 2. And that he said that day 1, day 2, and day 3. And to make it all 3 days, each having that 50-50 seemed a miracle. But I don't think it was till like end of day 2 or day 3 that when we were talking, you were like, what? And I realized that you weren't able to hear everything that was going on.
There was a conversation that you had with the doctor. I know after that then is when we started to call our family, at least, our parents is who we called to kind of tell them what was going on.
You want to explain something about what you had and what makes it unique?
I was diagnosed with AML leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia. It is an aggressive form of leukemia. It's acute.
Right.
Because there's also the chronic, which is longer lasting. But acute is what happens sometimes when you have acute is that your body goes through what's called a blast crisis. And so my body was overproducing immature white blood cells. Mm-hmm. And what happens with that then?
In blast mode.
Yeah. It's like boom, boom, boom. It just kind of kicked into blast mode.
They were like growing exponentially like baby rabbits.
Baby rabbits, and also, they were replacing the good white blood cells. So then as there becomes fewer and fewer, it's harder for your good blood cells to get to where they need to go to.
You said it was replacing them. They just become so many. And they can't do anything. Mm-hmm. Those white blood cells can't do anything. They're immature. And so they crowd out the space and the existence of what's supposed to be there.
Yeah.
To me, that's a picture of the fatigue that you were talking about. All your body parts are doing what they ought to be doing there, getting the white blood cells to them. It's just like running this, getting nothing, having no effect, and never turning off. Does that kind of fit the feeling?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, my heart rate was just pumping all the time. And I think that's just, things start to work harder in order to work properly. And I think that's kind of what was going on when they took my blood and everything. I was anemic, and, there are some other things besides my organs shutting down that kind of led to all that.
You want to mention any of the statistics or numbers?
I think you should, because you did a lot more research about it. I actually, later on when I was in the hospital, one of my hospitalists, he told me, he's like, I wish that every person who came in and had someone going through this had the curiosity of your husband. He could not believe after giving you, because he's the one that, remember, they printed out a huge, like, all the documents. They're like, you're not going to understand this, but you took it and then you came back and you actually had questions about it. And that was like, I think that blew that doctor's mind. But anyway.
Yeah, the AML. So that's a type of leukemia, acute, and I think yours was like M5A, which is, more specificity. And some of that didn't come back till later also, because it takes a longer time to get all the way down to
all the DNA and genetics of all of that. Yeah, that was really cool.
Of things.
Yeah.
But basically, if you look it up, they have a survival rate, that's like 24% are still alive after X amount of years. And, we're not interested in the survival rate.
Yeah.
What's the cure rate? And the cure rate for this, that you would be cured, is 4%. That is very low. So you're basically looking at death. If they can get you through the 50% today and 50% tomorrow, if they can survive the emergency right now and we can get into full treatment, your cure rate is 4%.
Yeah.
And so this was very dire. The picture is you're going to die.
Statistically. Yeah.
But there were other plans underway.
There were definitely other plans underway. One of the big things I remember is, when we called our parents, we belonged to a military community our whole lives. And not only that, but our parents were very involved in ministry. We were involved in ministry. I really think that prayer, especially starting at this point, became the thing in that moment that saved my life. I truly believe that I was headed to die. Like, I was supposed to die. I was headed to death. Some people be like, well, you didn't die, so you weren't supposed to die. But I think that was where I was headed. And the prayers of the people are what saved my life. We called our parents. One of the really cool things I remember is you were talking to your mom, and I could hear her on the phone saying, let me talk to Casey. I want to talk to Casey. And so you handed me the phone, and I was like, hello? And she was like, Casey girl. That's how she addressed me. Casey girl. All I need to know is, are you going to fight? And I mean, my reaction was like, well, yes, of course I'm going to fight. And she was like, okay, that's all I needed to know. And so then I gave the phone back to you, and then there was more discussion, and then hang up prayers, boom, everywhere, like spread out. Facebook messages, phone calls, text messages, exponential. Like, just like my immature white blood cells were exponentially like growing, producing.
We replaced them.
Right. We replaced them with prayer. with prayer
cells.
Yes. The prayer cells just exponentially grew. When I look back, though, I think that moment, that it caught me off guard just a little bit, because I, at that point, saw myself as a victim of something. Like, not like, of having this affliction, of being under the thumb of something. And that question from your mom was so super important, because I feel like that was the moment when God entered the picture. At that point, I had not really even, I was more concerned about my plight, my suffering, how how I was feeling, how I couldn't do anything, how I whatever. And then it was like this reminder, oh my gosh, God can do it. Like it was like a jolt to me. And I think at that point, just by expressing that, that is what ended up being was, yes, I'm going to fight. I didn't know what that looked like or anything. But just expressing those words was a declaration of the fight.
I remember that. I remember that you didn't just answer her question, yes, I'm going to fight. It was like you're just saying it on your own,
Yeah.
Because I remember you said, I am going to fight this. I'm going to beat this. And there was something really important about you voicing that there was something extra. It was one of those rare prophetic moments that something is declared and it has legs on it.
Totally. Well, and the other thing that kind of took me off guard was that your mom asked me the question, and when I gave her the answer, she was perfectly,
She was like,
that was
"We're done
perfectly
here.
acceptable.
And we're done here."
Yes. Okay. That's all I needed to know.
That's
And
right.
I was like, wow, that was weird, but then, and then I think she was ready to get to business, actually. I think that I was ready to everyone was ready to get to business of prayer and whatever else that meant. So I remember at this point, though, the big thing was they had to, they super hydrated me, and then we had to wait. I had to have certain vitals, and the blast crisis needed to stop before they would move me to a different room. And I'm not exactly sure how long that took. Time is blurry to me.
I think it was about 3 days.
3 days.
Well, I mean, they moved you to before they started giving you treatments. I mean, the treatment you got is the max.
Yeah.
They explained this will kill you. This is going to kill her in her current state. We have got to change the composition of what's going on inside of her and give it space to be able to do something.
And I remember that because they were giving me all kinds of things to help boost all of my phosphorus, magnesium, shots, all kinds of things to kind of get my body to a point where it would accept the chemotherapy. But one thing I'm remembering now is being in a room and waking up. I don't know why I didn't see everybody come in if I had been moved into that room. But I remember there was one point where I woke up, and it may have been the next day or 2 days later, and my room was full of people. And this is another thing. I thought everyone was there to just make sure I was okay, right? People were in the room, crowded in a circle. Everyone was looking at me, and I was like, wow, this is really awesome that everyone would come in here and check and make sure I was okay. And it was not connecting to me that these people were in this room to tell me goodbye.
Or maybe goodbye.
Maybe goodbye. Yeah.
This was at the end of day 2. Overnight, it was, call the people at the house. And doctor's like, you got to get your family here ASAP. They need to come in the morning. You need to get them here in the morning because they need to talk to their mom.
Yeah.
And I think that might be where you might have clued in. I think it might have been day 2 that you clued in that they were talking 50-50.
Yeah.
Because that you were surprised between that and then also everyone coming in. But the kids came in. Who brought them?
Yeah.
Rachel Francis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she could drive the van.
Yeah. Right.
She was not afraid of driving the van.
Our staff members at the time. And they came up and they were somber and they were serious and they knew that your life was on the line, literally on the line. And you didn't know that they were just not visiting, but
there was purpose behind the gathering.
That this was potential last chance with mom. Remember the kids coming in. You remember Elijah saying, "Mom, are you going to die?" And you remember telling the kids that you...
I've been told the story. I don't know what point that was. So but I do not remember. I don't remember that.
It was probably more for me
Yeah.
than than you then. But so the kids came in. I mean, they had to wash their hands and put the masks on and the gloves and everything because you were at max danger level, of infection or anything. But he was the last one to come into the room. The older siblings came in, filled up the room. And at that time, we had all 9 children in our house. Just that narrow window of time where we had all 9 kids in our house. Mm-hmm. And Elijah walked in last, but he didn't stay in the line. He walked past through everybody. It was almost like everyone gets a chance to hug you and talk to you or stand next to you. And he just unaware of protocol.
Yeah.
and he was, so awkward at that time. But I just remember him walking through with this deadpan face. There's only one thing that is important. And he walks past and he just walks up to you. And he has his hands just straight down by his side. And he looks at you and goes, "Mom, are you going to die?" I mean, that was the one thing that mattered.
Yeah.
And so he needed to go ask you
the question.
if that's what you were going to go do. And, "Mom, are you going to die?" And who cares about the sensitivity of the question or what you ought to say, who ought to talk first or anything like that. I just thought, I was like, there's my man. This is how we need to go through this.
Yeah.
Let's go straight to the matters. And you said, "I don't know, but I'm going to fight this." And you kind of echoed what my mom had prompted you to declare. It was like, and now, okay, the answer is no. Or how about no? Time to work. Now the strategy and the work.
So I was kind of in a situation where there was a lot going on in my mind, in my emotions. I feel like that hard line between reality and the spiritual was diminished. I don't really know how to explain it. Sometimes I felt kind of like I was floating, and other times I felt like I was really coherent and there. But I think one of the things was in these first 3 days, God was working in me on a lot. But one of the things that I was so convicted, adamant, it was a part of my very soul, was what I needed to do was I needed to make sure that all of my kids, each one of them, so there was no question in their mind that I loved them. And I loved who they were. I loved what they do. I love how God made them. I loved every part of them. And I was overwhelmed with this sense. It was my responsibility that they had no question if I died where I stood with them. There was a time where you brought all the kids to visit, and I remember I took time talking to them about who they were, what I loved about them. But another thing that I was super convicted about, it's not conviction, no, I felt responsible for, was their taking what was going on and using it for what God was intending it for, and that was not for them to take it and use it, to internalize it so much that it kept them from doing anything. I think what I really wanted to tell them was that if God had prepared me and you for this journey, that all the way from the beginning, God knew that they were a part of it, and He had prepared them for it. And so whether I lived or died, this was going to be a piece of who they were forever. And they were not allowed to squander that or take it and use it selfishly in a way that kept them from experiencing life. taking it and using it in a way that kept them sad to keep them from doing things. Like, I wanted to encourage them that this was also for them and that they had a role to play. And whether I lived or died, they were going to take that with them and they had to use it for good and for being positive and for it being a monumental moment of God shaping them. I think about it now, and I don't think I've ever felt, maybe one or two times, such a sense of responsibility towards something. And it was very strong in me. And I think that's kind of how personally I took this journey, and also you, is that this was not going to be something that we took and either tamped it down or twisted or didn't share with people. That was a big conviction for me.
But you actually had a moment where you told them.
Yes.
You said you are not almost like in a speaking up to them in a scolding meeting. We will be making this into construction.
That part I told them all together around the bed. Also, another thing, as a mom, you want to take care of your kids. I mean, that's what you're created for. That's why you're their mom. You want to be the one who is doing everything for them. And I think another thing I was really faced with was that, number one, where I was at that point, I couldn't do anything for them except give them that. But they were going to leave that hospital room and they were going to go home and they were going to have you. And I had to trust God giving them what they needed in a time where I was fighting for my life and I couldn't do it. I couldn't give them what they needed. That might be one of the reasons why that sense of responsibility was so strong in me. But another thing is just that I was faced with the fact that I had to trust God and his plan, and I had to trust you, and I had to trust whoever else God was going to put in their path to help them. That wasn't going to come necessarily from me. And that is a hump I had to get over. But I think that was a crack in the door of my realization of how small my faith was in God. Because another huge thing that I'd always had was a lot of fear, and especially fear of dying.
What stands out to me is that this was this thing that we took on in almost like a bull by the horns sort of a way, but we went into it totally incapable. Another phrase I've had about this part of the story is just not ready. Mm-hmm. Is that we were not ready for this. We weren't prepared in the sense that we were strong with each other, that we were strong in ourselves, that we were, at peak health in other ways in order to take this on. There was a real unreadiness for us to start this journey, to undergo it. Maybe if you shared a little bit of share some of the experience of the lead up to going into July 6, Casey's day of death, indications that you had of that something's wrong physically, but also maybe some wrestling that we've had personally or with each other. Mm-hmm. The not-readyness.
The year leading up to, being diagnosed with cancer was a year that was kind of full of a lot of, I guess, emotional dealings, physical dealings for me, in the sense that, I had some physical things going on where I did not, feel very well. I was having, migraines, and I was fatigued a lot, but I also was having a lot of stress-induced issues, which, included having panic attacks, having kind of control issues, because I need to have everything fit in a box in order for me to be pleasant and happy. And If anybody knows Kevin, he is all about not being in a box. And so I think that tension between us, that created a lot of friction. It created a lot of stress. It made me kind of bitter. But also I was seeing a counselor because I knew that the way that I was really behaving, like, I'm a person who really takes a lot of stock in the holistic health of something, and to know that there needs to be, there's usually a spiritual component and a health component, physical, whatever it is. And so I was seeing a counselor for that because I knew that somehow all those things kind of went together. In the past, when I'd gone to counseling, there were a lot of connected things. And so there was this progression going on of trying to deal with physical things and stress-related issues and also relationship issues that I thought were just things wrong with me or me having to deal with it. But I think that the closer we got to the date, there was also a component of leukemia in that also kind of reared its head and played into the lead up to July 6th.
It was very complicated, and it's hard to look back with 2020 on what started what. But the thing that especially sticks out to me is just that we weren't ready. I don't think we weren't well personally. We weren't with each other. Mm-hmm. You weren't well personally. The ministry programs, they had blown up in a positive way. Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of responsibility that in the middle of going into all this, but we ourselves are not ready for this wrench to be thrown into the works.
When you look back on it with 2020 hindsight, you would say that we weren't ready at that point. But then, the other point happened where we were thrown into it. And I feel like that was, sometimes you just need like a good shake, or there's nothing like a life altering thing that happens that gives you clarity. It makes you flip the switch, and all of those things that don't matter just kind of, they stop existing, at least for a little while, or you can cut that out, or you just get, I think for me, I just got super clarity on what was important. And because my life was at stake, I was only going to deal with the things that were of realness and that were important. When you are met with adversity, you can dig in to all of the grievances, but you can also, the opposite, you can let it go. And I think for me, what I knew I had to do was I had to let it go. Everything that I had been struggling with was shown to be everything that God could provide for me. Love in our relationship, as far as the care that you had for me when I was sick, and the fear of the panic of the lack of control, fear of dying, death, all of those things. Okay, so it's in front of your face. What are you going to do about it? At that point, I could have dug in and said, yes, but this and this and this and this. But I think when your life is really on the line, you realize that those are not the things that you should be holding on to.
That's what an apocalyptic is. Picture or a vision or an experience of when everything crashes and the end of time and life is over and the judgment. An apocalyptic, it literally means the uncovering. Mm-hmm. But the literary intention of an apocalyptic is people are going through something and they're stuck and they can't do anything. And they don't have to be stuck, but they are stuck. And then they're given an apocalypse. It's a vision of the apocalypse. And what it does is it lifts you. The point of a literary apocalypse is to lift you up here and then even more. And here, boom, boom, boom. And you are now watching the cosmos dissolve at a time where the cosmos must be reckoned with. And you're this little tiny thing, or the matters that you had is this little tiny thing. You're like lifted way up here, and you see the sovereignties that are actually sovereign and the epochs that can be stringed together in a way that the plan unfolds in stages, and everything has been given its spot by the good Almighty God. And then you come back down, and you're like, you get that? You see what's going on here?
Yeah.
There's an apocalyptic vision in it, and it's meant to lift you out of what you're stuck in.
That totally happened. It was like, what? Why was I even concerned? Well, no. Well, I mean, yes, I agree with your picture. I think that's pretty much exactly what happened. And it's like you get this perspective that is like so much more grand, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I mean, I really felt in a way corrected. I think that's one of the miracles of all of this. I talk about how God saved me. He saved my life. But another miracle that I feel completely blessed by having and thankful and grateful for is that my faith was tested. And instead of choosing that part of me which I struggled with, which was fear, I actually had courage. And that's one of the things that I felt like it focused me. It did bring me out of like self-consumption. It opened my eyes and woke me up and actually made me see that my faith wasn't fake. It was real. I was okay with whatever happened. Even if I died, just knowing that I passed some kind of faith test, that I was proud of myself for that. It's special. That was God talking to me in a special way.
Yeah, then you had a ministry explosion of being strong and courageous. And I feel like my role was to open the corrals and tell everybody in. Don't everybody stay out. Everybody in.
And I didn't like that at first.
I know. But there was something practical that happened. And that was that our team that we had, our staff members, we had full-time staff, but we had some full-time interns also. And then a whole bunch of volunteers and partnering leaders. They all made a shift from being our team to being our family.
Yeah, we had a couple of staff members, someone who had been previous staff with us, but also someone who was current but was getting ready to go back home. And we had,
Go to college.
To
finish up college, right?
That was Rachel, and then the other staff member was Hannah. I'll say their names so that you don't get confused about who I'm talking about. But Rachel decided that she was going to stay with our family through December so that she could help the kids essentially when because Kevin had to do a lot of traveling back and forth and then ministry stuff. And so she just felt like God really was speaking to her to stay and help out our family. And so
driving, feeding, shopping, school,
meals, making sure that
cleaning.
There was some, adult supervision for them while Kevin could then be free to go back and forth to the hospital and stay with me at night and all of that. And then Hannah, who had left Hawaii, she called and wanted to come back and told Kevin that she would take over the actual ministry aspect of running the clubs and
at one of the locations.
Yeah. Right. And that she would take over that job for him.
Because that was my main focus.
Yeah.
Andrew and Alika were at Aliamanu, Damien Desiree down at Pearl Harbor and Hickam Air Force and Navy. Mm-hmm. But mine was Schofield, and she she was going to relieve me of that whole community focus.
Right. So then Kevin would be free to still do ministry stuff, especially administrative meetings, things like that. But then he would have freedom to be with me whenever, I needed to have him. And pretty much he stayed the night with me every night. So that ended up being a huge help to have these two young ladies who just felt God speaking to them about how to help our family out, and then actually putting action to it and coming. There was kind of this moment where everyone was like, what do we do? And then there slowly became this kind of organized, people kind of took charge of certain aspects like bringing meals. I think for that whole time until November or December, we had people delivering meals to us.
And then there were other churches, groups, not just in Hawaii, but elsewhere, that they themselves experienced a unifying to come together under, keep Casey alive. Everybody was drawn into the story. That, I think, that's a whole story, because there are some really neat accounts. Mm-hmm. So when we go into a next one, Miracle Community from Our Disaster.
I think the big thing about this episode is that I was going to die. People stepped in with their prayers. God stepped in with his miraculous movement. And I just think about being saved from dying. And I always thank God, but I always thank other people too, because I know that their prayers change the trajectory of things.
No joke.
No joke.
I think for me, just talking about the different conversions of flipping the switch, a perspective of, are we going to let life be doom gloom to us, or what do we tell our kids about what this means? Something about the nature of life is not just living. There's an audacity in it, and there's like a hair up its butt to live, and and there's life is supposed to be about winning. There is an aspect about life that's supposed to be about winning and facing it, and being given an apocalyptic about it, so that you don't ever get stuck with not doing life. Life is more than what you think it is. It's a good word that's fully loaded. It's like the Hebrews, they say l'chaim, which means, to this abundant, eternal, like to real life, to good life. This was about getting a stronger picture of what God's kind of life, or the life that humans were supposed to experience and to do. It's about getting a better picture and sense of all that. Miracle Community on the next one. Mm-hmm. Did we do it?
We did it.
All right. Peace out, folks.
Bye.
Catch you next time.
You got